Alright everyone, so please ignore the fans running, the laptop in the background, and everything else like that. I've got found an old hard drive with a bunch of footage on it, and that's being transferred over, but I was recently doing some prints here with my artillery, and I've noticed that the extruder arm here is super wobbly, so I suspect that it might have the dreaded crack in it. So I'm going to show you how to tear down your hot end and replace it. And personally, I'm not a giant fan of aluminum extruder arms, but this is a pinch, and I am genuinely curious if my reservations about them are well founded. So let's go ahead and tear this down and see what we find out. So let's dive into it. My guess is the crack is at the bottom down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this apart and we're going to go from there. Alright, probably should have said it at the beginning, but make sure that your machine is unplugged just so that way you don't accidentally turn it on. If something gets bumped, you don't fry a connector or something like that. Just good basic safety stuff. So we got the 4 screws off, we have the fan and the fan guard off, and now's also a good time if this was really dirty to clean it off. In my case it looks pretty good, so I'm not going to worry about it. So now we can come along and remove the 4 screws holding in the extruder assembly and try to remember the order. Believe me, even I forget. Long one. Another long one. Short one. And a long one. Okay. So now we can gently remove the heatsink assembly and just drop that down. And we now have access to the extruder assembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully remove the thumb screw, nut, and spring assembly and set that aside. Trust me, if you lose that, it's a bad day. Slide that guy off, and now I can inspect this and see what condition it's in. And yeah, sure enough, there is a small crack here at the bottom. That is not ideal. Really wish this one had 2 bearings on it, because I think what's happening is this is a single bearing design, and what's happening is it gets a little bit of side load on it over time, and then that pretty much just wallows out the plastic. If it had 2 bearings on it, then I don't think that would be such an issue. Okay, well, we've got that guy out. While we're at it, I'll just, blow out the little bits of plastic in there. Now, when we go to install our aluminum arm, the biggest problem that I've seen people make is they go, oh, okay, sweet, I got my aluminum arm. I'm just going to throw this on here. And with some of the designs of the arms, oops, the spring got caught. One of the problems that people run into is the bearing down here will interfere with the bearing that's already on here. So in this case, yeah, that's going to interfere. So we're going to have to carefully remove the bearing right there. So we'll grab some needle nose pliers. All right, so we have the bearing off the shaft there. One thing I think I'm going to do is, I think just because we're going to have aluminum riding on steel here, I think I'm going to put a little bit of grease in there just to prevent any excess rubbing. All right, so now we've got that in there. We can bring back our extruder assembly. The only thing is I'm going to use the included spring here just because I'm going to assume that's set correctly for the tension. There we go. Make sure that when you install this that the nut is actually pressing against the spring or it's not going to function. So I think it is safe to pop this guy back together. Under normal circumstances, I would say it's also a good idea to maybe change out your PTFE, but I've done that pretty recently, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm just going to get my screws started in here in reverse order. Really sorry guys if I keep bumping the camera. There is zero clearance here. All right, top guys in there. And as I'm putting the screws in, I will double check that the extruder assembly still moves freely, just in case something got bound up. Obviously that's not a good thing. You don't want to get it all together and then realize, oops, I did something wrong. So apply a little tension there. Yeah, that feels good. Now, okay, the reason why I'm personally not a giant fan of aluminum extruder arms is, I know some people are going to argue with this, but I actually like the flexibility of plastic over the stiffness of aluminum. And hear me out on this. Back in my days of doing RC cars, initially I thought plastic parts were bad. Plastic's only on cheap vehicles, everything needs to be aluminum, and if it's not, well, it's garbage and it needs to go. Well, the actual reality is having parts that have some flex to them is actually not a bad thing. And especially in the case of this, I feel like it can compensate for any, you know, imperfections in how your tension is, the material, things like that. So that's the reason why I prefer plastic arms, but in this case, these are getting harder and harder to find on Amazon. So I decided, you know what, I will give an aluminum arm a try and see how it goes. Now I have actually thought about finding a design of these that I like over on Thingiverse, or even making my own, and then actually sending them out to Sculpteo to be printed in their multi-jet fusion material, and potentially offering them as a product. If you guys are interested in that, please let me know, because that'll help me determine if I'm ever going to do anything with that idea or not, because there's definitely some work involved. But that's the reason why I like that. So I'm going to cut the camera here. I'm going to finish installing everything, and we're going to see if the printer works or not. All right, so everything seems good. What I'm doing is I'm just warming up the hot end here to extrude some filament through, and then I can double check that my tension is correct. And if it is, then we'll go ahead and print and all will be well. So overall, if you need to check on your extruder arm, change your extruder arm, or anything like that, hopefully this video will be helpful for you. Obviously, I understand it sucks that they do crack, but it's not just an artillery-specific issue. I've seen this happen on other brands, and I can even say with my GoPro, a couple of the plastic parts have cracked, especially with the newest one that I've gotten. So there still seems to be an ongoing problem with brittle plastic coming out of China, it seems like. So that is that. So yeah, I'm applying some tension here on the filament, and it seems to be pulling through and making a pile, and it's pulling on the reel. So I'm going to say that's a successful fix. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you here next time on Make It With Calvin.